Hey friends. Oh, hold on. This might be better if I get my mic set up. Hey friends. I wanted to take a second to come in and chat a little bit about Birth Photographer of the Year. Again, there's a lot going on, and it is a semi-simple experience as far as like submission goes. But if you want to better understand like the overall or the overarching Birth Photographer of the Year experience, this video is for you. If you're mainly just interested in the feedback and submitting your images, then really the only thing to know is that you can submit a maximum of 5 images in each category or tag, as I am calling them. And you can opt to have feedback or no feedback. And that's kind of the gist of how the competition works. But there's some little nuances and quirks on how the rest of the competition or the awards process works. And so I wanted to take a second and kind of walk through some of those nuances and different words and what they mean. And so I recognize that I've been submitting into awards for many years. And so there are some words on the website that I'm quite familiar with and feel comfortable with, but I recognize that not everyone will understand what those words mean. So I want to take a little while, a few minutes, to go through some of the words on the glossary page and explain what they mean. So am I live in the right group? I am, which is fantastic. And I'm on my profile. Yes. And we're actually live. Okay. Just double checking all the things. There's nothing worse than realizing you've done a whole 1 hour live stream and missed it. So, okay. So if you go to exposingbirth.com, the homepage is, it is the awards homepage. And so as you're scrolling through that page, there's a ton of information there for you. For when entries begin. I actually don't think that I have on the homepage when entries open, like the actual date of the stuff. So maybe I'll check that in the header so it's easy to find. The dates are currently in the rules page. However, I will make a note to put the dates and information in the header, just so it's easy to find. So let's go through the glossary, what it means. I want to go through the category for the creative category a little bit more. I'm using the word category because I think it's a little bit easier to understand. However, it's not really a category. It's more like a tag for organizational purposes on my back end for me. And I'll explain that a little bit more in detail, and hopefully you'll be able to understand that. So let's go through the first bit, and that's the portfolio. Now, your portfolio is essentially any image up to 5 that you submit into the awards. So your portfolio can be 1 image, or your portfolio can be a maximum of 5 images. So if you submit 2 images, then your portfolio is 2 images. If you submit 5 images, then your portfolio is 5 images. And so and I'll just read what I wrote about portfolio as well. So when you submit a single image, it counts towards the total amount of images you submit. A portfolio of images is considered up to 5 images. When our PPY judging panel, and we'll talk about what PPY means as well, but when our PPY, which would be Professional Photographer of the Year, panel are judging the finalists, they will assess your entire portfolio, which consists of the 5 images or however many images you submitted, 2 letters of recommendation, and your business review. And so that would be considered a complete portfolio. So you have your portfolio of images, and then you have your complete portfolio. So your portfolio of images is however many images you submitted into the awards. And then your complete portfolio would be if you also went on to submit the 2 letters of recommendation and the business review. You'll be required to submit 2 letters of recommendation and the business review when you upload your images at entry. So what this means is if you submit 5 images into a single tag, so whether that be documentary or creative, then when you submit your 5th image, you'll also be asked to upload your letters of recommendation as well as your business review. And so one of the girls I saw asked me if I could do a template, which I think is a great idea. So I can absolutely create a template for you so you can see what that looks like. And I'll check those up on the website for you. So give me a day or so to get that done. But your 2 letters of recommendation, 1 letter needs to be from a colleague, so another birth worker, a midwife, an OBGYN, another birth photographer, a backup, a doula, anesthetist, anyone who is in the birth space in a professional way. Chiropractor, anything like that is fine. Your 2nd letter of recommendation will need to come from a client. And you can pick whichever client you would like. And your business review will be a series of 10 to 12 questions that you'll need to go through and answer for the PPY team, the Photographer of the Year judging panel. And so the way that process works is you can submit up to 5 images. And obviously, the more images you submit, because we're working on an aggregate score, the more images you submit, the more points you can add to that aggregate. And so an aggregate is just a accumulation of all of the points that you get from each image that you submit. There's some little nuances between aggregate and cumulative, but for the purpose of this and understanding, we can think of it of an accumulation of your 5 images of that 5 image portfolio or 3 image portfolio or whatever. And so it's good to think about it in the sense of if I submit 5 images and all of them do professional practice and someone submits 2 images and they both get gold, which is amazing, but let's say it's hundreds, which it's highly unlikely that even one person will get a 100 score, but let's just say one person submits 2 images and they get 2 100s. That's 200 points in a 2 image portfolio. But then let's say someone else submits 5 images and they all score 75, which is professional practice. 75 times 5 is more than that 200 of the 2 images. And so while one person might have done really well with those couple of images, it isn't a full portfolio of images, which is 5. And so when we're looking for birth photographer of the year, we have up to 5 images because we want to see a good overview of what you can create. And so when portfolios go into PPY, the judges are looking for that diversity, right? So the whole purpose of having a full portfolio is to ensure that, okay, is this person just really good in theater, and are all of their images that they've submitted images of theater? Or is this person diverse, that they know how to handle low light? They also know how to handle a spotlight in theater. They know how to use flash. They know how to use natural light. They know how to work with tons of people, or however birth might present itself. And so it can be, I feel, if we're choosing certain images to submit in order to get that higher score, that's totally okay if we're going for something else that we haven't quite introduced yet, but we will in the very, very near future, which would be like honors points. Then that might be a strategy that you want to take, is I don't really want to win birth photographer of the year, but I do want my honors points. And so then we might curate images specifically that we know will score really high, but not necessarily score like an overall portfolio, right? And so having that diversity is super, super important. And we talk about this in the same subject rule, which we'll also get to in a second. And so if you are in the top 5 highest scoring image portfolios, then you will have also been expected to submit those 2 letters of recommendation and the business review. And so one of the reasons why we're doing this at the beginning instead of after the results come in, and then if you get that portfolio score, then we contact you and ask you to give that to us. That felt really stressful for everyone. That felt stressful for the entrants, for the clients, for the business, for the birth workers who we were asking to support us. And, a lot of these people are midwives, and it was really difficult to get that done in the time frame that we needed. And so we are asking for this to be done when entries are submitted. And there's currently a month until entries open, a little over a month before entries open. And then there's an entire month where entries are open. So there's about 2 months, 2 months to get your letters of recommendation and your business review in. And so we're hoping that by asking this in the very beginning, that it will give you guys that little bit extra time to gather the information that you need, rather than that 48 hours of like, I'm top 20. And everybody has that opportunity to have that experience. And I love the experience of the top 20 and the top 5, because part of that experience is reading what other people think about you and writing what you think about yourself. And we typically tend to have, not all the time, but sometimes we have a little bit of a negative self-talk within our head. And so it's nice to put together something that is kind and uplifting about ourselves, because we don't always do that. And when we reflect back on our businesses, specifically in the business review, I find that, sometimes I can go, man, I haven't done shit in the past 5 years. And then when I start writing and answering the questions, I get to remind myself of all of the accomplishments, that I've done over the past 12 months, 5 years, 10 years. And then I go, oh, I'm actually not so shit, or I'm not such, a lazy person, or whatever it is that I might tell myself in my head. And so this is such an amazing exercise for you to do. And so if you get the opportunity to sit down and answer those questions, even if you don't plan on submitting it as part of your, complete portfolio, it's still a really, really great exercise for you to do for yourself. So that's what a portfolio is. You've got your portfolio of images, and then you have your complete portfolio, which will make up those three components, which is the 5-image portfolio, and then your 2 letters of recommendation and your business review. And so that is considered a complete portfolio. And no one will see those, by the way, except for the PPY judging panel. PPY, what is that? Lacey, you keep saying that. PPY is short for Professional Photographer of the Year, and it is considered, it's a judging process. So if your portfolio goes to PPY, then while it is a short acronym for Professional Photographer of the Year, we do consider PPY to be a form of judging. So if we say, my portfolio went to PPY, then we just simply mean that our portfolio went to the PPY judging. So the final judges who select those. 2 letters of recommendation. So when you submit your images into Birth Photographer of the Year, BPOTY, I should start saying that. If you submit 5 images, you'll be asked to also submit 2 letters of recommendation. We kind of went over this, but I'll revisit it. This is not required. So if you just want to submit 5 images and get your feedback, you're in no way required to submit the following 2 pieces of material that we're asking for. You can just hit skip and just submit your images. It is in no way required. I don't want people to feel like, oh, I don't have the letters of recommendation and the business review, so I can't submit 5 images, or I can't submit the competition. That is not true. You can still submit up to 5 images in each tag. And if you want to be considered for Birth Photographer of the Year, then you would submit those other 2 pieces of information. However, just remember, if we get to, the top 5 if we get to the top 5 and that information isn't included in your portfolio and you have submitted 5 images, there is just not enough time to go back to that person who has not submitted that and ask for that information. It does take time. And at that stage in the competition, we just don't have that much time. And so we will skip that person and move on to the next person, the next highest portfolio. And so I really want to encourage everybody to keep on hand, business reviews and letters of recommendation. I keep a letter of recommendation on hand for getting into theater. And so it's not just like, why would you do that? There's a plethora of reasons why I keep that. And, getting into theater and being at various businesses and asking to gain entry into a place where, a typical person wouldn't be able to gain entry into. It's not just theater, it's NICU, it's in various parts of the hospital. And having that readily available, not necessarily printed up in your camera bag, but readily available for you to email to anybody, having it in your Drive folder or your iCloud or whatever is actually really, really beneficial. And also having a letter of recommendation on hand for, a parent who is like not sold on birth photography, you can forward that to that person. And so it's not just for the sole purpose of the awards. These resources are exactly that. They're resources that I actually use in my business quite regularly, quite frequently. And so I know it might feel like a little crazy or bizarre, like who the hell would have that on hand? Me, I do. I do. And I really want to encourage you to have that as well. And so, 2 letters of recommendation, a business review. I will get a business review. I'll get the questions up on the website today, and I'll get a sample of letters of recommendation as well. When you upload that to the website, that is anonymous and goes to closed judging. So no one will see that except the PPY panel of judges. So please don't feel like your privacy is being invaded. Only 5 people, 6, me included, will see that information. So business review. So your business review will consist of approximately 10 questions that will be required for the entrant to answer and submit with their images when entering the awards. I say required, but if you want to win, then that will be required. The option to upload your files will pop up if you've submitted 5 images. You may skip this and only choose to submit 5 images and not, etc., etc. However, if your 5-image portfolio scores high enough cumulatively or aggregate, then you do not have those two pieces to complete your portfolio, then we cannot consider you as birth photographer of the year. So just keep that in mind. Challenge. What are challenges? So challenges are a unique part of the awards process for BPOTY. It allows for our judging panel to hold different views and to hold different judging scores in a safe and productive way that benefits the entrant and anyone watching. If a judge scores 5 points higher or lower than the final majority average score, then they are optionally able to challenge that and ask the judges to reconsider their score. And then a discussion will be held as to why. And that judge must hold their score if they optionally challenge. Now, if a judge scores 10 points higher than the final majority average, then that would be considered an automatic challenge, and it will ensue another panel discussion, and all 5 judges will be able to re-enter their scores. So top 20, the top 20 is part of the top 20 highest scoring image portfolios. So the first phase of the competition. I wonder if we should think of this as like phase 1 and phase 2. But the first phase of the awards process is images, right? And then depending on how your image scores add up will depend on if you make it into that top 20, right? And so we might find people who submit 4 images who make it into that top 20. However, it still probably won't be enough to make it into that top 5. And so it's really important to think about how you're approaching the awards process for yourself. So typically, but not always, those that submit a full, complete 5-image portfolio are able to score higher scores, increasing their chances of being in the top 20, which is absolutely true. And then majority rule. So the majority rule simply means that 3 out of 5, so more judges than not, are in a scoring range, and 2 other judges are outside of that scoring range. So the highest that image can be is what the majority of judges think it is. So if there is an image that is all over the place, so someone's in a 75, someone's in a 79, someone's in an 82, someone's in an 85, and then someone else is in a 70, because that's such a wide range, then that would get a true average. So it would be all of the numbers added up together and then divided by 5. And that would be the average, because there is no majority judge. There's no 3 judges that think that image should be in a specific in a specific award bracket. So that would get a true average in that instance. And then if the highest scoring judge is 5 or 10 points away, then there will be a challenge. An optional, maybe. There might be a challenge. Cumulative score. So the cumulative score of your portfolio is the individual scores that your images received added up together. So if you submitted 5 images and they scored a 79, an 81, a 92, a 77, and an 80, then you would add those 5 scores up together, and that would be your cumulative score. Technically your aggregate score, but I'll change the wording on that. That would be your aggregate score. So that portfolio would score 409 as an aggregate. And so you can see how if you only submit 4 images and then someone submits one more, how you might lose, 70 points. Because the majority of images are scoring in that professional practice range. And so even just, we might feel like, oh, why do I want to submit, a professional standard image? Because that might be all the points you need that stand between 20 and 21 portfolio, right? Which is kind of fun to think about. So finalists are the top 5 highest scoring portfolios out of the top 20. So these portfolios will then go on, along with their 2 letters of recommendation and business review, to be assessed by our PPY panel of judges in a closed judging process. So this is not live streamed and it is not open to public view. The winner of BPOTY is the complete portfolio chosen by our PPY judges out of the top 5 highest scoring portfolios, or the finalists. And now we get into pixel manipulation. So I saw pixel manipulation in the rules, Lacey, and I don't quite understand what that means. So pixel manipulation is the ability to manipulate, ability or inability to manipulate the pixels in an image. So when you're post-processing images, be it in Lightroom or Capture One or Photoshop, there are certain types of edits and tools in those programs that alter the structure of the pixel, and edits that simply enhance the existing structure of the pixels. And so it's really important that we understand how our images are made up and what kind of editing we're doing to ensure that we're staying within the rules of the awards process. So an example of pixel manipulation would be cloning, the healing tool, head swaps, composites, adding elements to an image that wasn't in the original single file capture, or removing elements from that image that wasn't in the original single file capture. So if we're looking at an image in Lightroom and there is a light switch above Mom's head and you don't want that light switch there and you clone that out, you are removing pixels from the photo. So that is not allowed in the documentary tag. However, you can put that in the creative tag where that is allowed. And so you're allowed to manipulate pixels as much as you want, essentially, in the creative tag. However, you're not allowed to do that in documentary. So please keep that in mind. Enhancing pixels would be something like adding vibrance. So you're not actually changing the structure of that image. You are adding more information to the existing image. So you're not actually changing the structure of that pixel. The pixel's still there. It's still the same as it was before. You're just adding more information to it. And vibrance is a great example. So when you slide that vibrance slider, your pixel doesn't change shape. It doesn't get bigger or smaller like it does in saturation. So if you're saturating an image, that pixel gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so if you've got two pixels next to each other and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, they kind of like overlap each other, which is why it can get like neon, because you've got pixels with so much color that are overlapping each other. Whereas with vibrance, the circle pixel stays the same, and you're just like adding more color to that pixel. And it's not actually getting bigger or smaller or anything like that. So that's not changing the structure of that pixel. You're just adding more color and information to that pixel. Tag. What is a tag? So a tag is sort of like a category, but it isn't really a category. And I wanted to go through this process because I think it's really important that, transparency, you understand how the competition works. And so I want you to think of this like tags as a way for the awards team to easily sort images and get that image in front of the correct judge, right? So we will have a creative panel of judges who are judging creative, because that is different than judging documentary style images. And we want to make sure that we're getting the correct image in front of the correct judges to get an accurate representation of the score of that image. So when you are tagging your image, you're just letting us know what judge that's gonna go to. And that's really helpful for us on the back end. But it's also going to be really fun because that gives you guys a little bit more creative space to create a little bit more freely. And so, the whole purpose of this awards process is to push the boundaries of what birth photography is and what it looks like in a traditional way, and then pushing that out in a big way, right? Like in a mainstream way, in a commercial way, in a branding way. And so I thought, well, what better way could we do that by adding a creative tag? So now you will be able to alter the pixels of your image, which in previous years we've never been able to do. In this competition, you can in others. And so I find it really difficult. Like if there was something that was removed from an image, to make it less distracting, but someone else chose not to do that, or for whatever reason, it's really difficult to judge those up next to each other. So we've created two separate tags. One's documentary, one is creative. And you can submit up to 5 in the creative tag and then up to 5 in the documentary. So you will not be able to put 7 in one and 3 in another. The max is 5 in each. So you can, put 5 in one and 3 in another. But no more than 5. And so what's going to happen is we're going to separate those images out and put them before 2 different judging panels. And then we're going to bring those back together when we figure out what the top 20 is by portfolio. So if I submit 5 in documentary and I submit 3 in the creative tag, when those come back together, I wouldn't be able to win the creative tag because I only have 3 images in it. I mean, it's the first year, so unless we only have like 10 entries, then my chances are much higher because I submitted 3 images. And so I guess the first year is the year to really go all in, isn't it? But let's say it's 10 years from now and there's hundreds and hundreds of entries in that creative tag. If I only have 3 images in it and then 259 other people submitted 5 images, then my 3 images in that tag would come together to make a portfolio of images, and then my images in the documentary tag would come together to make a portfolio of images. And so those would come back together, and what I mean by come back together is the top 20. When we're pulling the top 20, we're pulling the top 20 from both tags. So, the top highest scoring portfolio might be documentary, but the second highest scoring portfolio might be creative. And then it might be, the third is documentary, the fourth is documentary, the fifth is creative, the sixth is creative, the seventh highest is documentary. And so we will not have a top 20 in documentary and a top 20 in creative. There will still only be one winner, and there will not be like a winner of creative or a winner of documentary. This is really about finding birth photographer of the year. And birth photographer of the year will either win with a creative portfolio or win with a documentary portfolio. So that's something that we can revisit in the future if we find that that's not working or we're not liking that. However, it's something I think could be really fun. So rubric. So our rubric is public and accessible by all entrants. So this is important so that entrants know exactly what our trained judges are looking for. And on the homepage, there's a little square underneath of the main header image that will have our judging criteria and how all of that works. So 60 to 69 is below award standard. 70 to 77 is professional standard. 78 and 79 is commended. 80 and 84 is silver. 85 to 89 is silver with distinction. 90 to 94 is gold. 95 to 100 is gold with distinction. So the award images start in the silver range. So at 80. So if you score an 80 and above, you have an award. If you have a 79 or below, that is not an award image. And I think we're at our last one, the same subject rule. So I've heard this tons, but I recognize that you guys might not know what same subject rule is. So the same subject rule in competitions that I've entered in the past, we used to not be able to enter the same subject. So if we went to a birth, we couldn't enter the images. We could enter images from the same birth, but the subject of that image couldn't be the same subject. So if I entered an image of a mom at one birth, and then I entered the same mom in a different birth, so let's say a mom had 2 babies in 2 years or 3 years, I couldn't enter that because it was the same subject, even though it was different births. And this also meant that if I had one birth that had multiple amazing images, I couldn't submit images from the same birth because it had the same mom in it, unless the subject was different. So I could photograph the placenta and then enter an image of the mom because it was a different subject. But here we don't have a same subject rule, so it doesn't really matter. But I want to talk about this because I want you to understand how PPY judging works. And so, if we get through a portfolio of images of 5 incredible images, but they're all from the same birth, but then someone else has submitted 5 different images from different births with, diversity in it, the person who has submitted different images is probably going to be more likely to get the favor of the judges. Not always, because the 5 images that are the same might be amazing. And they would really, really, really have to be amazing in order for the judges to disregard the diversity that they are told that they should be looking for in a portfolio of images. So just keep that in mind, that while the same subject rule, and if you're not looking to make it to the PPY, then it doesn't really matter. You can submit 5 of the same images. That's totally fine. We recognize that some people submit not to win. They submit for the feedback. They submit for the growth, to learn, to expand their creativity. And so that's totally fine. But if you're submitting to win, then this is a little tip for you, is to just make sure that those images are different, even though they don't have to be. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. And that's everything. I don't think that there are any questions. And so replay crew, if you're coming back through and having a watch, just pop any questions down below and I'll hop in and answer them as soon as I can. Okay, thank you. Bye.